December 17th, 1942, North Africa, somewhere outside Elagala. Dust and wind. A faint hum breaks through the desert silence, the kind of sound no one expects to matter. Private Jack Red McConnell squints across the horizon. Through the shimmer of heat, a stubby, square-bodied vehicle rattles over the dunes. Its olive drab paint is already half hidden by sand, its open frame shaking with every rock and rut. Two soldiers ride inside, one at the wheel, the other gripping a mounted Browning .30 caliber. It looks almost comical against the backdrop of the desert, like a toy someone left out in a sandbox of war. "Those little crates again," mutters a nearby German sergeant through his binoculars. The Afrika Korps had given them nicknames: Spielzeugautos, toy cars. Compared to the monstrous Panzers or the hulking SDKFZ half-tracks, these American Jeeps seemed laughably fragile. Open-topped, thin-skinned, barely large enough for 4 men and a radio. But then, the toy does something unexpected. The driver guns the engine and swerves hard, leaping off a ridge that even a German light tank would have hesitated to cross. The Jeep lands with a bone-rattling thud, straightens, and speeds off toward a ravine. Within seconds, the machine disappears into terrain that would have swallowed the heavier vehicles whole. The sergeant lowers his binoculars. The laughter from his comrades dies in his throat. Moments later, the thunder of artillery roars from beyond the ridge, coordinates relayed by the very Jeep they'd just mocked. Shells scream overhead and land squarely on a fuel convoy parked behind them. The desert sky erupts in orange flame. The same vehicle that looked like a child's plaything had just outmaneuvered, outpaced, and outsmarted the Reich's armored pride. But the story of how this unlikely hero came to exist, the frantic birth of the Jeep, begins not in the sands of Libya, but in the offices of the U.S. Army Quartermaster Corps 2 years earlier, when an impossible order was issued. It was July 11, 1940. Europe was burning, France had fallen, Britain was on the brink, and, across the Atlantic, the United States, still technically neutral, faced a question that would define the next 5 years of mechanized warfare. Could America build a light, four-wheel drive reconnaissance vehicle faster, cheaper, and more versatile than anything on Earth? The specifications were maddening. The Army demanded a quarter-ton 4x4 truck that could carry 600 pounds, climb 60-degree slopes, weigh under 1/300 pounds, and do it all within 49 days, from blueprint to working prototype. Every major car manufacturer in the country received the bid. Most didn't even bother replying. Only 2 small companies took the challenge seriously: the American Bantam Car Company, a struggling Pennsylvania automaker, and Willys Overland Motors from Toledo, Ohio. In a cramped workshop, Bantam's chief engineer, Karl Probst, sketched the first design in just 5 days. By day 49, Bantam rolled their prototype into Camp Holabird, Maryland, a squat, utilitarian machine with a flat hood, upright grille, and low stance. It didn't look like much, but it was about to rewrite military mobility forever. The Army officers took it for a test drive. They plowed it through mud, sand, and shallow streams. It refused to quit. It handled like nothing they'd seen. A colonel stepped out, covered in grime, grinning ear to ear. "This," he said, "is the soldier's best friend." The Jeep wasn't perfect yet. Its frame needed reinforcement, its engine more muscle, but its soul, rugged, simple, unstoppable, was already there, and within months, Willys refined Bantam's design with their powerful Go Devil engine, creating the Willys MB, the definitive Jeep. Ford joined production under the GPW designation, ensuring mass output. The toy was about to go to war. April 1942, somewhere near Fort Benning, Georgia. The rain comes down hard, slicing through the pine canopy like needles. A platoon of young infantrymen huddles beneath their ponchos, faces smeared with mud, rifles wrapped in oilcloth. Then they hear it, a cough, a sputter, and the steady growl of a four-cylinder engine. Out of the mist, a Willys MB rolls into view. It splashes through a puddle, headlights dimmed under blackout covers. The driver, Corporal James Sully Sullivan, sits half standing as he guides the wheel. Behind him, a sergeant clings to the windshield frame, shouting over the roar of rain and engine noise. The Jeep doesn't stop for anything. Not the ruts, not the mud, not the fallen branches. It seems to glide where trucks would bog down, where horses would refuse. This was its proving ground, 1,000 miles of hellish terrain built by the Army to break lesser machines. Yet the little Jeep refused to die. It leapt over logs, scaled ditches, and hauled everything from field radios to mortars. Soldiers began to see it not as a vehicle, but as a partner, a faithful mule in metal skin. When the Army formally adopted the Willys MB in 1941, no one yet understood what kind of revolution they were unleashing. Production ramped up at a staggering rate. Ford and Willys built them side by side. Interchangeable parts, standard bolts, identical silhouettes. Assembly lines clanged day and night. By 1942, over 100,000 had rolled off the line. Mechanics joked that if you couldn't fix a Jeep with a wrench and a hammer, you weren't trying hard enough. Its design was pure pragmatism. Flat panels for easy stamping, fold-down windshield, detachable canvas top, and a hand crank that doubled as a starting tool and weapon of last resort. In the training camps, the Jeep became legend. Troops raced them like go-karts, leapt them over trenches, even taught them to swim, waterproofing the engine with condoms over spark plugs and grease over the distributor. But the real test would come overseas. By late 1942, the first convoys of Jeeps were arriving in North Africa under Operation Torch. The Germans, confident in their mechanized superiority, couldn't fathom why the Americans relied on what looked like an oversized lawnmower. General Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox, had an army built around precision-engineered vehicles, Panzer III tanks, SDKFZ armored cars, and Opel Blitz trucks. They were powerful, on roads, but the Sahara had no roads, only shifting dunes and hard-pan salt flats. It didn't take long for the myth of invincibility to crack. German recon units began reporting sightings of the strange American vehicles, small, agile, darting across the desert like insects. They appeared from nowhere, vanished just as quickly, often carrying a single man with a map and radio. They'd climb slopes the panzers couldn't, cross wadis at full tilt, and sneak through gaps that would jam any half-track in. One intercepted message, a frustrated German officer described them as a swarm of mechanical locusts. The Jeep's mobility rewrote the rules of desert warfare. In Tunisia, they ferried medics and ammunition where even mules failed. They hauled generals to the front lines and wounded back to the rear. When General Eisenhower himself rode into field command, it was in a Jeep, and with every dusty mile, the Germans' laughter faded. Because this toy wasn't just surviving, it was winning the war of movement. By 1943, it would do more than carry soldiers. It would transform into gun platforms, ambulances, even makeshift trains, whatever the front demanded. The Jeep was evolving, and the legend was only just beginning. July 10th, 1943, Sicily, Italy, Operation Husky. Dawn breaks over the Sicilian coast in streaks of orange and gray. The sea churns with landing craft. The air hums with the thunder of naval guns. And among the thousands of men storming the beaches, a new sound cuts through the chaos. The high, whirring growl of a Jeep engine. Lieutenant Robert "Bobby" Grant grips the wheel, helmet cinched low, eyes locked on the shore. The Jeep, stripped of its canvas top and splattered with seawater, bucks and jerks through the surf. A 30 caliber Browning is mounted in the rear, its barrel wrapped in oilcloth. A medic crouches beside him, clutching bandages. Behind them, a wounded paratrooper groans as the Jeep slams against the sand. Grant floors the accelerator. The engine snarls. The Jeep claws its way up the beach, dodging craters and twisted metal. Machine gun fire rips overhead, but the little vehicle doesn't slow. It climbs a berm that a 6-ton truck couldn't have cleared, crests it, and suddenly they're in open ground. The medic looks back in disbelief. How the hell did this thing make it? Grant just grins. Because it's not supposed to stop. That was the Jeep's secret. It wasn't a vehicle of war in the traditional sense. It was an idea. Mobility over might. Simplicity over sophistication. Where tanks rolled, the Jeep went. Where trucks sank, it floated. Where horses stumbled, it climbed. By mid-1943, the Allies had turned the Jeep into a Swiss Army knife on wheels. Mechanics and soldiers alike found endless ways to modify it. As an ambulance, litters mounted across the hood and rear let it carry the wounded directly from the battlefield. As a weapons platform, twin Vickers or Browning machine guns mounted behind the seats made it a deadly anti-infantry rover. As reconnaissance, stripped down to bare metal, with radios wired in, it became the eyes and ears of advancing divisions. As supply transport, loaded with jerry cans, ammo crates, and even chickens, it kept the front lines fed and armed. In the North African and Sicilian campaigns, Jeeps carried generals, spies, medics, engineers, even chaplains who used them as mobile altars. There were Jeeps with stretchers, Jeeps with minesweepers, Jeeps rigged with snowplows and wire cutters. The Germans couldn't believe it. Wehrmacht officers who captured a Jeep often commandeered it immediately. One report from the 21st Panzer Division lamented that American vehicles go where our tanks cannot. Another officer allegedly wrote, "Give me 10 of these in exchange for one tank. I'll take the Jeeps." The Jeep's versatility became legend. In the hedgerows of Normandy, it darted between trees, ferrying ammo under fire. In Italy's mountain passes, it scaled switchbacks like a goat. In the jungles of Burma, it hauled supplies for Merrill's marauders where no truck dared go. By the time the Allies were fighting across France, there were Jeeps in every theater, every front. Soldiers gave them names: Lil Abner, the Bug, Hell's Pup. Each one carried scars, bullet holes patched with tin, windshields cracked, steering wheels wrapped in tape, and yet, somehow, they kept running. One GI famously said, "The only thing that'll stop a Jeep is running out of gas, and even then, we'll just push it." By 1944, over 400,000 Jeeps were in service. Factories back home ran day and night, churning them out faster than anyone could count. They rolled off ships in England, North Africa, Australia, ready for war anywhere on Earth. And soon they'd face their greatest challenge yet: Europe itself, mud, snow, and the full fury of German counterattack. December 22, 1944. Near Bastogne, Belgium, the Battle of the Bulge. Snow falls thick and silent over the Ardennes forest. The trees are black silhouettes in a world of white. The roads, if you can call them that, are sheets of ice, rutted and frozen solid. In the distance, artillery thunders like an angry god. Through the haze of powder and smoke, a Jeep crawls forward. Sergeant William Tex Harper grips the wheel so tight his knuckles turn white. The windshield is folded down, snow collecting in the creases of his scarf. Next to him, Private Eddie Novak holds a Thompson submachine gun across his knees, eyes scanning the trees. In the back, two shivering medics cradle a wounded officer, his face pale beneath his bandages. The Jeep's Go Devil engine whines as it claws through the drifts. The tires, wrapped in makeshift chains of barbed wire, bite into the frozen earth. The temperature is 10 degrees below zero, but the machine doesn't care. It moves, slow, steady, unstoppable. All around them, tanks are stuck, Shermans frozen in ditches, half-tracks buried in snowbanks. The jeep weaves between them like a fox through a forest. A burst of machine gun fire cracks in the distance. Novak ducks instinctively. Tex just leans forward, eyes on the faint glow of a farmhouse ahead, the makeshift field hospital. They slide to a stop outside the door. The medics leap out, shouting for help. Within seconds, the wounded man is carried inside. The jeep idles, steam hissing from the grill. It's been running almost nonstop for 16 hours. Tex slaps the dashboard. "You done good, kid," he mutters. That's how it was across Europe, from Normandy to the Rhine. The jeep was everywhere. In mud, snow, rubble, and ruin, it carried men, mail, ammo, and hope. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't armored, but it was faithful. General Patton, ever the showman, had his personal jeep chromed and polished, the hood emblazoned with War Eagle. He rode it like a chariot through liberated towns, his ivory-handled pistols flashing in the sun. Meanwhile, Eisenhower called the jeep one of the three decisive weapons of World War II, alongside the C-47 transport and the landing craft. Even when the fighting stopped, the jeep didn't. It hauled refugees through shattered cities, carried supplies to starving civilians, and served as the first sign of freedom rolling into occupied villages. Children climbed onto the fenders and waved at the soldiers inside. Heroes in mud-stained uniforms, laughing through exhaustion. By war's end, over 640,000 jeeps had been built, more than any other single vehicle of the war. From the beaches of Normandy to the jungles of the Pacific, they'd carried the burden of battle. Captured German reports spoke with reluctant admiration. One Wehrmacht officer wrote, "The American Jeep is an astonishing machine. It can go anywhere, do anything, and seems indestructible." Another simply said, "Capturing a Jeep is better than capturing a tank." For the Germans, their laughter in the desert was long gone. The toy had become the war's most indispensable machine, proof that genius often wears simple clothes. As the guns fell silent in May 1945, jeeps rolled through Berlin's ruins, their tires crunching over glass and ash. Soldiers stood in them waving flags, cameras clicking. The same vehicles that once rattled across dusty training fields in Georgia now parked in the heart of the Reich, and as the sun set over Europe, thousands of them would be left behind, gifts to allied nations, to farmers, to history. What began as an impossible challenge, a quarter-ton truck in 49 days, had become a symbol of freedom on four wheels. Light, simple, undefeated, the machine that could go anywhere and did.